All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the live stream. Let me go ahead and pull up the chat and make sure we are good to go. Do a quick audio test, and then we will go ahead and get started here. Alrighty, so guys, today we're going to be covering basically this ferro fluid effect. Now, this is a really interesting effect, and you're probably thinking that it might be physics, but it's actually not physics, and I'm going to go ahead and explain here as soon as this live stream pops up, and we are good to go. There it is. All right, cool. All right, we're good to go. So for the 9 of you that are here, thank you guys for joining on a Friday. I know a lot of people have busy lives, but I wanted to go ahead and cover this effect. Believe it or not, there's actually no physics going on here. So what you're seeing right here, I'll just kind of go over it really quickly. I'm going to pull up the source file, and I'm going to show you guys kind of how this all works. Let me pull the microphone a little bit closer for you. So basically what we have here is we have just a few primitive objects and a couple of modifiers and constraints to actually make this happen. Now, for those of you who don't really know what you're looking at here, if you've ever seen one of those little magnetic toys, and I will go ahead and pull it up for you, it's called Ferro Fluid, and basically what it is this black liquid, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and pull up a couple image sources for you. It's this black liquid with iron filings in it and other ferrous objects, I guess, mainly just fine particles. And when you put it into a liquid within a container, like this example right here, you get this really cool effect when you put a magnet up to the side. This is a good example of kind of what's happening there. Now, I was looking at this the other day and thinking to myself, oh, we could totally use force fields and we could use Blender's built-in fluid calculator, but there's got to be a way to do this in another sense where we're not using physics. So let's go ahead and break it down. Again, this is the final result here. This took a little bit of experimenting for me to get this to work correctly. It's still a little bit glitchy, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you exactly how this is done. Someone said they're rendering an animation while watching this. That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like I'm always rendering something, right? So as you can see here, we have a cube and we have the ferro fluid following the cube. Believe it or not, this is not too hard to recreate. So I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the process and show you how it can actually work on different objects. And it's actually quite simple to create. Let's go ahead and let me show you the source file here. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my random colors for you guys. Hopefully you guys are all doing well today. Now this is a little bit laggy, and the reason for that is because there's a lot of modifiers going on right here and there's a lot of different constraints. Basically we have a fluid, okay, and that's kind of our inner cylinder. We have our actual ferrofluid itself, which is the magnetic part, and that is this is actually a sphere with a displacement modifier on it. And I'm going to go through how to recreate all this. You can see that as I move through different frames, our cube is going to go ahead and attract that ferrofluid. So if I go to rendered view, you can see right here, our cube is attracting our ferrofluid. If I pop into camera view, you can kind of see the animation that I've created here. So if I jump to another frame, you can see that the ferrofluid is pushed up against the side of the glass, just as it would be in real life. Watching from Chicago while working in the garage. Very cool. Awesome. What are you working on? A car? Are you working on a house project? Sounds fun. I wish I had a garage. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new file here. I'm just going to delete everything. That's always what I do. I delete everything so we can actually start completely from scratch and add every single element in. Let's start off by adding in a container for our liquid. So I'm just going to add a cylinder. Pretty simple. I'm also going to turn on this X-ray mode right here. Alt-Z is the shortcut for that. I usually don't use the shortcut. I'm going to go ahead and add in a sphere. Now this sphere is going to be our ferrofluid, okay? So this is going to be that black substance inside of the cylinder. Now how do we actually get this to react and do what we want it to do? Well, the very first thing we need to do is go to our side view, scale it down a little bit, and let's switch on our random colors so we can easily differentiate from each object. Thank you guys. Sorry, I got to get some caffeine here so I can make sure I'm focused. So one of the things I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to my modifiers tab. I'm actually going to generate a Boolean. Okay. Before I do that though, I want this sphere to kind of be on the edge here. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to use the Boolean type that's going to make the sphere look like it's still inside of the cylinder, but it's cut off in a way. So I'm going to go ahead and target the cylinder, and you'll notice right away we cut our sphere, but we don't want to cut it that way. We actually want to use the intersect modifier. And now when we move our sphere, notice how we can still move it inside the cylinder, but it seems to not be able to escape the cylinder. This is a key part of making this work correctly, okay? Very next thing I want to do is I want to generate a deform modifier, and I want to do the displacement modifier. I'm going to go ahead and click on new, and then we're actually going to go down here to our texture tab. Instead of image or movie, I'm simply going to choose distorted noise, and then I'm going to go back to my modifiers here, and I'm going to add in a subdivision surface modifier, and I'll crank that up to 1. Now, if we move this around, you'll notice that it still deforms, right? And it's cut off, which is good. This is exactly what we want. Now, how do we actually get this to kind of press up against the glass? Well, let's go ahead and add a constraint. This constraint that we're going to want is actually called shrink wrap. Now, you might be thinking, let's just use the shrink wrap modifier, but that actually doesn't work well in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and click on shrink wrap, and I am going to target the cylinder. And now, as you can see, it's pressed up against the side. Now, the order of the modifiers really is important here. So I want to make sure we go ahead and we follow this to a key here. So I'm going to actually switch our Boolean over to, actually I am going to save this real quick, and I'm going to go back to our other file so that I can make sure I have everything in the exact correct order here. Let's go back to our original fluid test here. All right, so we have shrink wrap. Yep, we did everything correct there. And then I just want to make sure we have, displace, subdivision, and then Boolean. So let's go ahead and make sure we have all of that correct. I believe it's this one. Yep. All right, so we want displace, subdivision, and then Boolean. Okay. And then for our Boolean, I'll go ahead and switch that to exact. And as you can see, everything just disappeared, which is not how we want it to be. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust the shrink wrap modifier, and I'm going to scale it until it's just about right. That looks good. And then I might scale our sphere up just a little bit. And it disappeared, and I don't know why. I apologize for that, guys. He said, hope everything is going good, LOL. Yeah, sometimes, for some reason, when we go ahead and we work on this stuff, you can see there's a few issues that are actually happening. I'll make sure you guys have this source file regardless, but I do want to just go over the modifiers themselves. We have a displace, subdivision, a Boolean, and then we just shaded it smooth. But it doesn't seem to be working, and I just want to double check and make sure I know why, so that I can give you guys the accurate information. Yep, we have cylinder, snap onto surface. Everything looks correct. Displace. I don't think I did anything incorrect. Let me go back. Sorry about that, guys, to the 25 of you watching. So much for being a Blender expert here. Displacement looks good. I'm going to just bump that down to 0.5. Maybe that's causing the issue. That seems to help a little bit. Okay, I think maybe it was just the displacement value. All right, so I'll keep that at 0.5 for right now. That seemed to help a lot. So we're going to go ahead and keep it there. Now, one of the key things here, guys, I'm going to go ahead and make sure my everything's set up correctly. There we go. One of the key things is that we actually need an empty to control this blob. So I'm going to go ahead and add in an empty, all right, and I'll go ahead and snap that to the center just as follows. I'm going to hide our cylinder, and then I'm going to actually parent this to the empty. Okay, so I'm going to shift click, parent, and now when I move this, you can see that it also moves our sphere. Now, the reason this is so important is because we want to make sure this empty is controlling where this blob is. Now, how do we do that? Let me go ahead and show you. We're actually going to put an object outside that is going to act as our magnet. So I'm going to add in a cube, scale it down, and we'll just have this be the size of the magnet. Now, how do we have our empty point to the magnet? Well, we're simply going to click on our empty, add a track to constraint, and then I'm going to select our cube, and then I'm going to switch our track axis to -y and our up axis to z. Now, when we move our cube, notice how our blob actually follows the cube. That's kind of the key to get this to work. Now, another thing that we can actually do, and this is really cool, we can actually add a shrink wrap modifier to the cube to keep it orbiting around our cylinder. So I'm going to go ahead and add a constraint to our cube, and I'm going to add a shrink wrap. I'm going to target the cylinder, and then all I have to do is make sure the distance is a little bit further like that, and we are good to go. Now, if you want to take it one step further, add one more empty, and I'm going to call this cube follow. Okay, and we're going to make sure that our cube always points to that empty. So I'm going to go ahead and do track 2, and I'm going to go ahead and select our cube follow. And now, if you look, notice how our cube not only tracks around our cylinder, but it always faces that empty, no matter where it is. And this is actually a really cool trick, especially if you want to have this not be able to escape. No matter where I move this cube, I cannot let it escape the cylinder now. And this is really good. This is exactly what we're looking for. Now let me go ahead and adjust this displacement modifier, make it a little bit more spiky. Awesome. So now all we have to do is animate a couple more things. We're almost there, guys. So let's go ahead and add in another empty. I'll just make this an empty plane axis. I'll move it up, scale it down a bit. This empty is going to control our displacement modifier. So I'm going to click on our displacement. Instead of the coordinates being local, I'm going to choose object, and then I'm going to choose this empty. And now what we can do is we can rotate this empty to control how our blob moves, so we can make it seem like magnetic goo. Now I'm going to go ahead and just insert a keyframe for our rotation for our empty, and then I'll just move forward to frame 120, and I'll just rotate it ever so slightly, maybe like 15 degrees. I'll press I to insert another keyframe, and then we'll go ahead and play this back. Now, you'll notice it's moving ever so slightly, but that is actually going to help us sell the illusion when our cube travels around our cylinder. So as you guys can see, we have some movement with our fluid. And remember, we're not using any physics here, right? So this is definitely a really interesting technique that you guys can use. I'm going to set our end frame to 120. I'm going to zoom in, and we are good to go. Now all we have to do is animate our cube, set up a scene and some lighting and some shading, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and go back to frame 0. With our cube selected, I'm going to press I. I'm just going to insert a keyframe for everything. I'll jump over to frame 30. I'll move it over here. I'll press I. Then I'll go to frame 60. I'll move it up. I'll press I. And then maybe we'll have it go all the way around again. I'll just move it like over here. And, oops, I got to go to frame 90 first. I'll move it all the way over here. Press I. And then maybe we'll move it back to the front. Now to get this keyframe from the front, just highlight it, Shift D, and then we're going to go ahead and move it to frame 120, and we should be good to go. Oops, let me just make sure this is on frame 120, and we're good to go. And now we're basically have a full loop. And the best part about this is we don't need to do anything complicated to make it loop because we're using modifiers. There's only one thing that's not actually looping, that's the displacement. If you wanted it to loop perfectly, this empty, controlling the displacement, you could use the exact same value and you could keyframe it on a bell curve. But for right now, I'm pretty happy with what we have. There's a couple more things we need to do. And thank you, TAVOMB. You said you are the GOAT. I really appreciate that. Let's go ahead. Let's start adding some shading and some lighting. Let's make this look really cool. And we're also going to add a jar to contain the recap. Yes. Or sorry, the recap. I'm sorry. I'm reading comments as I'm doing this. To contain the fluid. Can you make a recap? Yeah, I will at the end. Absolutely. Let me just go ahead and start by adding a plane. I'll bring it down. I'll go to rendered view. We don't have anything yet, but we are in cycles. I'm going to add an environment texture, which I always do. I'll just add this one for now, just to get a little something on here. Now for this specific cylinder, I'm going to go ahead and add a new material. I'll just make this glass with 0 roughness. 1.5 IOR is fine. Shade auto smooth. There's actually a couple things we need to do to this. We need to add a edge split, and we need to add a subdiv. Now we can shade this auto smooth, and it should be smooth as butter. Let's go ahead and find our sphere within our empty, and that is right there. And let's go ahead and give this a black shader with a low roughness, and now it's nice and shiny. Right click, shade auto smooth, and now we have our liquid inside of our cylinder, and it looks really good. Now let's go ahead and set up our magnet material. For our magnet, the best part about this, there's no physics, so however we want to change this, we can. I'm just going to add a bevel modifier with maybe 10 cuts or 10 segments. Right click, shade auto smooth, new material, and we'll give it a metallic shader with a roughness of 0.1. Now it looks like a neodymium magnet. For the floor, I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. That looks fine. And then I'm just going to set the stage by tabbing into edit mode. I'm going to go over to our edge select mode, extrude it upwards, press Z to lock it to the Z axis, and then I'm going to bevel this side here and scroll to give us some subdivisions. Tab out of edit mode, shade auto smooth, and let's go ahead and set up our camera. I'm going to go back to solid view, get out of X-ray mode. I'm going to go ahead and add in a camera. Our camera is right here. Now I like to reset our camera to 0, everything to 0. And then I'm just going to simply rotate our x-axis 90 degrees. I'm going to flip it around, and then I'm going to snap to my camera. Give myself a 100mm lens. I'm going to go ahead and back this up on the y-axis, bring it up. I'm going to set it to 1920 by 1080 for our dimensions. And I'm just going to back this up just a little bit more. That looks good. Let's go ahead and just see what we have so far. Awesome. Everything's looking good so far. There's a lot of different things we need to do to make this really look good. One of the things is lighting, of course, but the other thing is we actually need to have a glass jar around our cylinder. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. I'm literally going to take another cylinder. Where's cylinder here? All right, cylinder, scale it up just a little bit. I'm going to go into my X-ray mode. I'm going to give this a edge split. Where's it? Edge split. I'm going to give it a subdiv, and I'm also going to give it a bevel in the beginning up here because I want to bevel it just a little bit with 10 segments and 0.05 bevel. Right click, shade auto smooth, and then we also want to give this a solidify modifier. This is kind of the key here to actually make this thing look like it's containing our liquid. See how we have this little border? That is our solidify modifier in action. Now our inner cylinder, I actually also want this to have a bevel. So I'm just going to generate a bevel with the same 0.05 and 10 segments as before. I'm going to bring this all the way up so that it's inside of our jar. And I just want to double check that this thickness lines up correctly. So I'm going to increase it just a little bit to about there. And then I'm going to go ahead and increase the size of this cylinder just a little bit. That looks good. You want them to barely line up. And then for your outer cylinder, we're just going to give it that same glass material. And then for our inner cylinder, which is inside, we're going to duplicate our glass, and we're going to give it 1.33 for the IOR. And now it should be looking a little bit more like a glass jar. And just those little details, you can already tell the difference. Just those little details are going to give it that surface thickness, right? Because the edge of a jar, such as this jar I'm drinking out of right now, it has a thickness, right? There is no infinite flatness. That's not a real thing in real life. So that's how you kind of push that to the next level. Thank you guys for your patience while I take a drink of coffee here. Let's go back to solid view. I just want to make sure this is not touching. It looked like it was touching the surface. I think we're good. Now what I want to do is start setting up some really cool lighting here. Now, one of the easiest ways to do this is by heading over to the shading tab. Now, for some reason, when I head over to the shading tab, it will glitch a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and just pop over to rendered view here. I'm going to switch out of object mode and head to world mode. I'm going to scroll out, Shift A to add a texture coordinate, and then we'll just add a mapping node. We'll plug in the generated to the vector and the vector to the vector, and now nothing happens. And that's because we need to go ahead and adjust our Z value. Notice what happens when I adjust this Z value. We're actually rotating the HDRI, which is rotating the HDRI itself, but it's also rotating the lighting. So before I do anything or add any area lights, I'm actually going to rotate this Z value. And let's just go ahead and turn our pass part out up on our camera so we can only see this specific scene. And let's just go ahead and rotate this Z axis until we find something we really, really like. That looks pretty interesting. I'm looking for something that's really going to catch the eye. I'm looking for something where we have really strong contrast. That doesn't look terrible. Now keep in mind, once you have really good lighting, also mess with the background too. So our background plane is white right now. This is what it would look like if it was black, right? It's going to completely change the look of everything. I think a nice gray middle tone looks pretty good. But be careful because we're getting these weird banding shadows right here. Someone said it looks so good. Thank you. Now I want coffee. This is cycles. This is actually cycles. I'm going to go ahead and keep rotating this until I'm happy with what we have. And then I'm going to actually add an area light on top. So let's go ahead and let's add an area light. Let's bring it above. Now you can kind of see it right here. I'm going to scale it up. I'm going to give it a power of 500. And let's go ahead and bring it up some more. Now I want to make sure, you guys see this little line right here? I want to make sure that line is not seen. So I'm going to bring this up enough where we don't have that. And then I'm also going to, I might try an orthographic perspective on this. We're going to go ahead and bring our camera up and to bring up our side panel. And I'm just going to keep bringing this up. And I kind of want to give us a slight side angle on this, I just think it's going to look a lot cooler. This already looks a lot more interesting, in my opinion. Again, this is where the artistic style kind of comes into play. I also notice my modifiers are making something look weird here. One of these things isn't looking correct. Oh, no, it looks okay. Okay, I'm just double checking because I want to make sure you guys have an awesome render here. I kind of want to experiment with some darker coloration here on the background as well. And this is, again, where you kind of get into what you want for your render. See what happens when I turn the roughness down? Now we have this nice glossy surface. We can actually go ahead and rotate our background. Now, if you want, you don't even have to have this background in here at all. You really don't. It's totally up to you guys. Also, pro tip, and I've done this plenty of times before, notice how we have this black spot at the bottom? That's because our plane is actually intersecting the glass. So just make sure that your bottom surface is not intersecting the glass, okay? That's super key here. When I light scenes for product photography, the light at the top is always needed. Yes, it is. It's gonna help you guys out a lot. And already this looks really good. One of the other things I would suggest here is probably adding a black plane on the side. So I'm gonna add a plane, I'm gonna rotate it, I'm gonna kind of go into top view here. I'm just gonna rotate it like this and scale it up. And I'm actually going to make this completely pitch black here to catch any additional light, high roughness value. And I just want to go ahead and move that over there. Now watch what happens. I just want to show you guys the difference. This isn't always going to work, but look at the difference before, after. And if you bring this back and you slide it on the X value, you can also do the exact opposite, but from the other side. And that doesn't look terrible. I'm going to go ahead and raise our area light value to 1000. Make sure I'm not missing. Yep, area light is always the way to go. Much preferred over anything else. This looks really good. Now I want to go ahead and reference the original file as well because someone did ask for a recap. I want to show you guys the original file because the way I set the lighting up in here, you might want to just take a note of. So I actually have, so this is the original file. So I have some depth of field enabled as well with my cylinder, and I'm actually targeting the ferro fluid. And the reason I'm doing that is so that it actually follows the ferro fluid, and we're actually focused on the ferro fluid the whole time. And I actually have this grid floor shader that I made just from scratch with brick texture. And this is the HDRI I'm using. So I'm actually using an entire HDRI around our whole scene. I don't have any background planes, and sometimes that can help give you that more transparent look with your liquid. I personally think this looks better than the file that I just did. It absorbs light, so it's darker. Yes, so the black plane absorbs light, so it's darker on one side. Really good example of this. I'll just show you super quickly before we go back to this because this is super important. Where is it? Oh, it's this one. Yeah, so this file right here, a lot of people ask me about the lighting for this. The lighting came out really good for this. I just want to show you where my planes are set up. If I zoom out here, you can see on the left, I have this black plane. I just want to go ahead and hide this. So here's with the black plane already shown. And if I hide it, now we have a much brighter scene, right? But if I Control Z and bring it back, now we have this heavy contrast. Now this isn't going to work for every single lighting setup, but it does help a lot, kind of pushes everything to the next level. Again, this is why experimentation is so important. This is our scene that we've set up from scratch. I do actually want to add just a regular plane here. Hold on, let me just rotate this. Let me hide this one, bring this back. I just want to see something because I want to see if my theory is correct, and it is. So notice how much better this looks just because we've rotated. Also, we're getting some weird banding up top. Let me just fix that. I'm going to go ahead and just inset this a little bit. That should fix it, and it did. Again, that's why modeling is important too. Now we don't have that weird banding. I also want to take my camera and show you guys that if you go from an even more top-down perspective, you won't get as many of those weird like glares. I'm going to go ahead and scale my background up. And I'm going to go ahead and enable depth of field. And I'm going to select, gotta find it in here, my sphere, which is right there. And now if we go ahead and drop our f-stop down way a lot to like 0.1, now you get this really macro effect. That might be a little too much. Now that's kind of like what I'm going for there, and I actually think this looks really good. And then you could go ahead and render this out. My original one was rendered 1920 by 1080 and it looked really good. Again, what I love about this is we're only using modifiers and constraints. There's really nothing else to know about it other than that. And we're animating everything too with empties, right? It's stuff you can't even see. You don't have to see it. You can disable it for render. Empties don't even show up in a render. And this just looks really good. And then we can jump to another frame here. At this point, what I would do is I would probably render this out. I might choose a different background. Like if you want, you can make the bottom metallic. Like see how much everything changes when you just change just the simplest little bits. You can make it a more brighter blue kind of color scheme if you want something a little more scientific. If you want these edges to show up more, you go ahead and you take your plane here, right? You make it black. And now look, you have a slight, I'm going to see if I can see this there. Okay, so perfect example of why this works. See this edge? You can barely see the edge on this glass. If I turn that plane back on, look at how that edge just shows up. And that's because glass is a very tricky material to work with in Blender. But look at how we can now make that edge more defined just because we added this black plane. And just make sure you push it back enough where you can't see it. I also want to talk about the scale of it too. I'm scaling it up right now so you guys can see or you can't see it. It's showing up over here. You have to really take a look at what you're rendering and figure out where are my reflections coming from, right? How is the HDRI affecting my scene? Things like that. How is the area light affecting my scene? And look, I can skip to any frame and it looks fantastic. If you really want to take it to another level, I'll just take it another step. You find your inner cylinder, duplicate that glass material, and you can change the color of the liquid inside. Now you don't have to do this, but I'll just show you. I'll desaturate the background. You can make it a blue liquid inside. You can make it green, orange, pretty much whatever you want. Let me go ahead and take a look at these comments really quickly here. Hi, Sheila. We have Sheila in here. We have a lot of people in here. Subscribe to your channel. I like how you explain. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Kenny has been rocking the live streams. I know I've been quite addicted to the live streams lately. And it's been giving me even more ideas about what to cover with you guys, because a lot of the times when you do something like this, you might expect to use real physics, which is viable, but you can also get away with faking physics, right? And a lot of the time in Blender, we're faking half the stuff we do anyway, right? So it's super important to understand that it's easy to fake these things if you know what modifiers to use. The other thing is, if you really wanted to take this even another step further, and I don't know if this is going to work because I haven't tried this, I'm just going to go ahead and take my area light and duplicate it. I'm going to flip it upside down, RY 180, whoops, RY 180, there we go. Now it's flipped upside down. I'm actually going to bring this below my my container here because I'm just curious what this is going to look like. I'm going to scale it down. I'm going to make it the shape of a disc. Scale it down even more. Looks pretty cool. Almost as if there's this kind of platform underneath. I just want to see what this is going to look like. And then without our area light, it's going to look like that. Honestly, that looks pretty cool. And if you really wanted to, you could kind of hide the actual area light from render, and you could still have kind of a cool effect. Again, this is just me kind of experimenting with the same file. Your animation finished? That's awesome. That's awesome. What was the animation of? Please continue with the explanation on changing the inside. Oh yeah, so changing the inside, I was just kind of discussing that you could change the inside, specifically the color of the liquid. So if we go to our inner cylinder here, you can see we have an IOR of 1.33, which is the IOR of water, and I just kind of changed the coloration here. Again, you can make it pink, you can make it yellow, red, green might be a cool option. I think it looks fine the way it is. If you really just want to keep it clear, you can find a dispersion shader. I know of a really good one by Smouse. Is it Smouse? I think that's what it is. Yep. And he has some incredible dispersion shaders that you can utilize for this to even push it to the next level. Go ahead and bring this up a little bit. This looks really awesome. We can go ahead and render a frame out at this point. The only other thing I would change about this, I'm just going to go ahead and grab, is this the material? Where is the other material? I'm going to grab the other material and we're going to throw it on our new file because I just want to see what it's going to look like. This is our brick texture with some bump on it. Let's go ahead and go back here. Let's paste that in. Let's hide the original. Bring this down. Let's go to our side view and just make sure it's perfectly lined up. Pop into camera view, and there you go. Again, this is where we go back to like, what kind of materials are we using? How do they reflect on our glass objects? There's just literally so much to think about. Right now we're using a darker shader. Here's what it would look like if we had a lighter shader, right? And what's cool about this, I made this material, this floor material. You guys can use it for whatever you want. This grid scale factor on the right, we can adjust the size of the grid, which will also change our perception of the scale of the object. Now, right now, I don't think anything is to scale in terms of how big it would actually be. But if you want this thing to seem huge, right, you make the grid very fine like that. If you want it to seem very small, you do the exact opposite, right? And I think a good middle ground would probably be like right there. I think that looks pretty good. But again, this is some of the stuff that people don't really talk about. And I love talking about this stuff because it'll make or break your render, right? We have our depth of field, we have our glass, we have our ferro fluid. Another thing you guys can experiment with, if we hop back into X-ray mode here, turn our overlays back on, the actual texture that we're using, the displacement texture, you guys can swap that out with anything. Right now, I'm using distorted noise, which does look really good. But if you want, you can swap that out with a Voronoi texture. Again, that doesn't really look like the effect we're going for. You can try a noise texture. You can try clouds. You can try wood. I personally think the distorted noise works best. And don't forget, you can bump up your strength to like 0.9, and now you have, it's a lot more spiky, right? This is probably more or less what you're going for, is this kind of spiky look. Because if you look at the reference images online, that's what it looks like. Now, if you want to take this even one more step further, which I won't do in this live stream because I just don't think we have the time, you guys can actually make your own custom displacement texture that will look like a magnetic field. That would be probably the next step. Or you get really crazy with it and you use physics. Now, I do want to show you guys, and I'll just show you really quick so we can get the most value out of this live stream. How would we do this with physics? Let's go ahead and let's just run through that really quickly, because before I created this entire like crazy thing with constraints and displacement modifiers and all that, I actually did do this a little bit differently with real fluid physics. So I'm just going to quickly show you guys that since we have so much time left, because we're going to be going till 2 p.m. EST. I'm in a new file. I'm going to add in a cube. I'm going to go to Object, Quick Effects, Quick Liquid, and right away we have a liquid that falls. We're good to go. Depending on your PC setup, this may or may not go slow or fast. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my domain settings. I'm going to make sure all is checked, and I'll just set my end frame to 100. I'm going to go to my gravity. I'm going to turn my gravity off. I'm going to go ahead and grab a force field here. I'm going to bring it outside of my domain, and I am going to set the strength to -50, and then I'm going to go ahead and bake all, and let's just see what happens, because this should work right away, and then we can go ahead and animate everything. So if we go ahead and play this, you can see that our liquid is attracted to our force field. Pretty simple, right? Next step is to free all, make this liquid cube a little bit smaller, and I'll start it off a little bit closer to the edge. Now let's go ahead and animate this, this force field. Go ahead and press I. Then we're going to go ahead and go to frame 30. We'll bring it down. We'll press I. We'll go to frame 60. We'll bring it across real quick right over here. Press I. And then we'll go all the way to frame 100. We'll go towards the top. I'm not really trying to get this perfect or anything. So now if you look, force field starts here. It goes down. It goes right. It goes up. We're just going to make sure that the fluid follows this accurately. Let's go ahead and click on our domain. Let's bake, and let's see what happens. All right, let's go ahead and press play. And as we can see, we have our fluid following our force field. Now, what's really cool about this is this didn't take much time at all. And if you want, you could bake this out to keyframes. You could take all the individual meshes. It looks pretty good so far. There's a lot of things that when I was first doing this, I actually experimented a lot with this. What's cool is this is a low resolution, right? Right now, we are at 32 resolution. Let me try 100. And let me save this real quick, and I'll just save this as magnetic test 5, and I'll bake. Now this is going to take a little bit longer. My PC is pretty beefy. I've got a Intel i9. I have a GeForce RTX 3070 Ti. I have, I think it's like, I want to say 128 gigabytes of RAM. I mean, I've pretty much done everything I can to it besides buying a new GPU. Regardless, you can see how fast it's running through this bake here. I've done bakes up to 600 resolution before, and they just take absolutely forever. I was trying to create a shot of a glass warped in a white or semi-transparent plastic bag. Can you give a take on that? Can you explain a little bit more about that project? That sounds really cool. What's that thing? Let's go. Time to destroy the CPU. All right, let's go ahead and play this back. Let's see what it looks like. Wow, look at that. Now, it's a little quick. It's not exactly hyper-realistic, but you can see that it's following the force field. If we go to our side view, you can really see what's happening here. One of the biggest things about this compared to Flip Fluids, well, obviously this is free. Flip Fluids is like, what, $60 or $70? The fluid can sometimes grow or shrink. Like it can actually, it's almost like more fluid is being added throughout the simulation. Right here, it's kind of hard to tell, but I do think that we're actually losing some fluid along the way. And that does tend to happen when you're using Blender's built-in fluid simulator. But this looks cool regardless. This is how you would go about doing something like this. Is this possible with geonodes? I'm not sure. I'm not really an expert in geonodes, unfortunately, but that's something that can be looked into later. It looks so complicated, but it's easier than it looks. Love it. Yeah, it really is. And the thing about Blender is like there are multiple ways to do something, which is what I showed you guys earlier in the live stream. This is the more complex way, right? You're going to find yourself experimenting with this a lot more than the other method. And so I'm going to go back to the other method. That's the only thing about having this microphone in my face is I'm like looking around the microphone to make sure I can see what's on the screen. This method, in my opinion, superior to using real physics just because we can control every aspect and dynamic of this, right? We don't want it to be as spiky. We go to our displacement modifier and we crank it down to 0.5. Now it's not as spiky. We want it to be ridiculously spiky. We crank it up to 1. And now it's ridiculously spiky, right? To the point where we might not actually like the way that looks. I think it looks fine. I think it looks really cool. But you guys can completely adjust all of these different aspects. Looks like the alien from the Apple Plus show, Invasion, I think is the name. That sounds cool. Yeah, this, I will say that's the other thing is like, you don't want this to be magnetic fluid in a jar. You can make it into some sort of creature, right? And the cool thing about the displacement modifier is it's literally completely customizable. And it can be easily animated. Oh no, what happened here? So actually, I should probably point this out. This happened to me earlier. I was on a frame here where our liquid is gone. The reason for that, there's a couple reasons for that. Could be the Boolean. It could also be the position of the cube or the displacement. You can see it kind of reappears here. That can happen. That's one downside to this method. I did find a fix for it yesterday. I don't remember exactly what the fix was. You can see how it's not here right now, but then there it is right there. So I don't remember how I fixed that. Again, when you're using a lot of modifiers, sometimes things can get a little glitchy. When certain vertices overlap in a certain way, when you're using Booleans, it can really mess up your animation or your simulation, whatever you're creating. The cube intercepting, that could be it. There's a lot going on here, and Blender probably already is like, I've never seen this combination of modifiers in my life, but I think this turned out great. I love the way this turned out. And I love that there's no physics involved at all. But I did show you guys how we can also use physics for this. Increase the distance on the cube constraint. Yeah, let's try it. Let me go to... All right, so this frame, we don't have our liquid. So let's see what we can do. So you're saying increase the distance on the track 2 constraint? or on the surface constraint? Oh, wait, that actually worked. But now we're overlapping here, so we gotta be careful. Oopsies. That's so weird. Oh, there it is again. Oh, maybe we just need to be a little farther out. That is so weird that that worked, though. Nice call. Let's see if it worked throughout the whole animation. It did not. Go into a separate frame here. There was one frame. It was literally one frame. Oh my god, frame 51. Literally only one frame it's happening. That is so strange. All right, regardless, let me go ahead and back to the original file. Hold on. That is so weird. All right, this is the original file. Good call on the constraint, though. That was you really pointed that out quite well. So this is the original file. I don't think there's any glitches in this one. I just want to pull up the example one last time and answer any questions you guys have. We actually have a good 20 minutes left if you guys want me to answer any more questions. You just made it worse? Maybe, but that's okay. I mean, this is just all for fun. This isn't like, you know, a client project or anything like that. Does anybody have any additional questions about this animation? As you guys can see, it looks great. It's pretty close to what it looks like in real life. Close enough where I'm happy with it. Now, you want to get really crazy with it, you can also experiment with metaballs as well. Those are like where they break apart. Again, this liquid should be breaking apart, right? In real life, it would. Little pieces would fly off. You wouldn't have, the magnet wouldn't attract every single little piece, right? Depending on how strong the magnet is. But that's something to think about. How can we do that? Can we use simulation nodes? Can we use geometry nodes? How can we achieve that in Blender, right? When it all works except for one. That's always how it is in Blender too. You work so hard on a project and then, you know, something breaks or one frame doesn't look good. I've had that happen where I've had huge client projects, you know, multi-$1,000 projects, which is a lot to me. And then I look at the last frame or like a middle frame and it's completely blurry or it's just black. It didn't render any pixels at all. Yeah, it's happened. It has happened. And I've had to go all the way back, completely redo everything, or target that one frame and fix it somehow. Or just skip it and hope that it looks okay without the missing frame. Would look pretty creepy if the fluid inside was a cloudy muck. Thanks for demoing this. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How do you come up with these projects? That's a good idea. Actually, well, I want to talk about another project because this is a project I was working on too. So I want to talk about how, okay, I'll talk about that for the last like maybe 10 minutes or so. So this I'm going to talk about this first and then I'll talk about how I got inspired to create this. So when I posted the Sprite animation, which by the way, Sprite did not hire me to do. I'm not sponsored. They didn't hire me. Someone said, well, the liquid doesn't react in the bottle, Kenny. It looks horrible. You should never be an artist. You should quit 3D. I'm kidding. They never said that. But they said, here's a suggestion. Try to make the liquid react in the bottle. And I said, well, okay, I could probably do that. And I've seen certain examples that are very similar to this. Now, believe it or not, this right here is that example, right? So what I did is I took that comment as inspiration. I said, okay, this is possible. I know it's possible. I've seen it done before. So what I did was I basically made it, right? A lot of the times, most of my most creative ideas come from necessity or like needing something for a project. In this specific case, someone had commented that the Sprite bottle wasn't exactly reacting to the liquid inside. And that's completely fair because that breaks the realism, right? Every little detail needs to be accounted for. So when we look at something like this, this is kind of the effect we have. Now, I set this file up yesterday, and the goal was, there was a couple of goals. One was to maintain that liquid in terms of the volume of the liquid. So basically, there's an air pocket, right, in a water bottle or in a container. I wanted to make sure that I had that in this specific container. And not only that, but it maintained a very similar volume. Because, right, the liquid in the container and the air pocket are not going to change. They're going to stay the same unless you are somehow adding more liquid. I can break this down. Maybe this is what we'll do next live stream. I'll go over how I did this. This one is using some physics, but it's not intensive at all on your computer. This is yeah, I was really proud when I came up with this because it's using a very similar technique that I've seen before, but I think I'm doing something a little bit different where the fluid actually reacts to the bottle a little bit in a way where it seems semi-realistic, at least believable enough where it would work. Okay. Kenny, can I watch this live later? I'm at work. Yeah, you can. When the live is over, someone is going to edit it and just cut the ends off, and then they'll upload it. Absolutely, you can. So if anyone needs to leave, it's totally fine. Don't feel like you guys have to stick around, but I do appreciate everyone that is watching. So yeah, again, this is something that's what I'll do. This will be what we cover in the next live stream. Again, this was out of someone saying, "Hey, dude, you didn't make the liquid react." So I said, "Okay, challenge accepted," and I went ahead and I tried to do it. And I do think this turned out pretty good. This is a really low res version of this. Let me see if I can. I'll pull up the file. Let me just pull it up. Where is it? Here it is. So this is the file right here. Just go ahead and play this. It's a little slow right now in viewport, but you can see, I don't know if you guys can see. Can you see this easily? Where's my overlays? It's not letting me select anything. Oh, there's my overlays. So there's the liquid, just so you guys can see it. It is quite slow. I know, everyone, I knew you guys were going to be interested in this because, so it's a little tricky to get it work with different bottle shapes. But as you can see, it does work quite well. And you're more than welcome to try to recreate this on your own. I'm not going to go over it on this live stream, but hopefully this will encourage you guys to sign up for the next live, or not sign up, but join the next live stream. You can see it looks pretty good, right? It's a little bit finicky, like some of the settings could probably be modified a little bit. But if you switch to like any given frame, more or less, it looks pretty good. And you can see the liquid. What I love about what I did here, again, not bragging, but just kind of explaining why I think this is an effective approach. I was able to make it more or less level. Like a lot of the times, you know, you take like this jar right here. If I tilt it, it kind of maintains that levelness. I was able to achieve that using a couple of modifiers, constraints, things like that. There was actually a lot more than you would think that went into this. But also it's quite simple if you really break down the effects. Like right now you can't see my scene collection and all my objects I have, which I guess won't give anything away. But yeah, it's a great comment by TAVOMB. It's more than enough for product visualization. Absolutely it is. Again, when you're looking at these product viz videos, a lot of the time you're not really like gonna pay like no one's gonna be able to go, oh my gosh, like this vertex is completely off, right? But they will see that there is movement, so it's going to help sell that effect. And half the time, if you have motion blur enabled, which I usually do, you'll be able to at least interpret that there's liquid moving inside, right? A lot of the times you can kind of cut corners like that. The thing about calling it cutting corners in 3D is that you're really not cutting corners. You just don't have to put the work into places where it's not going to be noticed, right? The whole point is it's fake anyway. How can you make it look real using simple little tricks? So you're not actually being lazy. You're actually working smarter, right? Work smarter, not harder. I do love that saying, but sometimes it's annoying when someone says it and then they're totally wrong about it, right? But again, this is kind of the effect you get here. It looks good. Now you can see I have exaggerated the liquid here. You can tell that I've made it blue on purpose, but let's go ahead and play this back again on loop. And it looks good. I've exaggerated on purpose so you guys can see it, just so you can tell kind of what's happening here. Do we have any additional comments or questions or anything you guys would like to see? This is what we went over in our last live stream. Oh, no, not this one. We went over this in our last live stream. So if you guys missed that, definitely go check that out. We went through kind of a like crashing through debris reveal kind of animation, and it came out pretty good. I was pretty happy with this, and I was blessed enough to be able to use this this model right here, which is fully textured. Thank you, CG Cookie, for that. Much appreciated. So yeah, that is pretty much everything, guys. I think we went over like literally everything. We'll have to go over this on the next live stream. That'll definitely be our target goal. Sounds like everyone's pretty interested in that. people love physics related things. This is physics related. There is actually real physics going on here within Blender. So we'll definitely go over how that's done. And hopefully you guys can have some sort of takeaway from that, because this is a pretty valuable tutorial as well. But I do hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, which was kind of what I'll recap right now. Again, this is Ferro Fluid. You can look it up online. You can buy these. So yeah, this was a fun one. I'll check it out. When is the next one? The next live stream, I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. I don't know. Sorry, no idea. Maybe we can do some next week. Next week, I actually have something going on next week, but I will try my best to stream again soon. When is the next stream? Yes, I don't know. I'll figure that out. I mean, we'll definitely update you guys as soon as we find out. But yeah, for right now, guys, I will try to get this file to you. I can't get you the other file yet because I want to make sure I put out that tutorial, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. There's definitely a lot of fun little techniques being used here. And again, we're just really using the displacement modifier and a few constraints. Will be available for watching later. Yep. I'm not sure when the next live stream will be, though. Sorry, guys. I do have, so I teach, for those of you who don't know, I do teach full time, but I have a summer camp that I'll be teaching Photoshop at next week to some younger group of students, I think middle school level. So I'll be doing that. But in the meantime, definitely look out for more tutorials on my channel and CG Cookie's channel. And for those of you who don't know, I'll just do a quick shout out at the end here for Core, which is coming out very soon. Let me go ahead and make sure I can pull that up for you guys. Core, CG Cookie. There we go. Awesome. So Core, for those of you who don't know, the core fundamentals of Blender are coming out very soon. And you can unlock the core of Blender to elevate your craft, whatever your craft may be. And the core fundamentals comes with 9-course foundational journey designed specifically to unlock your full potential of Blender. And we have some incredible people that are working on this. We have Jonathan working on our mesh modeling. We have Kent working on digital sculpting. Jesse Kaizen, who you guys should be familiar with by now, working on lighting. We have Iwa working on materials and shading and also texturing. And then we have Phil working on animation. Wayne is working on rigging. Kenny, that's me, working on physics. And then last but not least, Sean is working on compositing. And a lot of these are just incredible. I've already been watching through some of the videos here. I've learned so much that I never knew about Blender. And I've been using Blender for like 3 or 4 years, and I'm still learning more. So I just had to shout this out one more time. Someone else asked, oh yeah, it's no big deal. The thing is, like, I'm so unpredictable that I couldn't begin to tell you when my next live stream is, but I am excited to tell you that I think you'll be hearing about this very soon. Correct me if I'm wrong, CG Cookie, but they should be hearing about this very soon, and the official release should be before you know it. So I'm very, very excited to be a part of this, and a lot of the things that I've been teaching in these live streams are to help promote this, because everything that I've been doing, you'll be learning about all of those different subjects and physics properties in the core fundamentals. So if you're interested, definitely bookmark this, at least save it for later, or you can click this little button and get notified as soon as it's launched. It should still be available for pre-sale, correct, on Blender Market, so definitely check this out. You're getting more than enough value for the price currently. I can almost guarantee you're not going to find any creators like what you'll find on here anywhere else. It's going to be very difficult. And they cover everything, pretty much all of the general core subjects here. So we're in the final bit of production. Weeks, not months. There you go. There you have it. All right, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping things up. I'll take any last minute questions now. If we want to talk about Ferro Fluid, if we want to talk about what we want to see next, I would love to hear from all 24 of you who are still here. What was your favorite part of the stream? What was your least favorite part? Is there something you want to see more of? Is there something you want to see less of? And, you know, what can we create in the future to help you guys understand more about Blender? Because after all, we are a community and we're all here to help each other out, ideally for free as well. So hopefully, you know, this free live session can give you some insights as to what you can create with just some simple modifiers and techniques. I mean, we're only using modifiers and constraints here, and you can see that it's pretty effective if you know what to use, right? And what to use, not only what to use, but what to use with other constraints, right? Because it's a combination of both. Oh, that's right. Omar, I'm so sorry. I forgot about the Doritos. That is my fault. Omar, give me a little bit more info about the Doritos thing. Do you want to see Doritos flying all over the place? Should we crack a Dorito in half and have that, dust come off the Dorito? Man, now I'm hungry too. What time is it? Yeah, I mean, it's 1:54. I've missed my lunch, so we're going to have to get some lunch here soon. Yeah. I wish I had a real CG cookie because I am absolutely starving right now. Um, any other additional questions that we have here, guys? Thanks for the stream. I'll have to watch most of it later. Yep, that's totally fine. And that's kind of the beauty of these live streams is that they're all recorded, right? They're uploaded afterwards. And if you have any questions, you can always comment and we'll be sure to get back to you. Open a package and let them fly out. That would be totally possible. Absolutely. Can use some force fields. We can use some rigid body physics for that. Honestly, the hardest part of the Dorito tutorial, whatever we may have with a Dorito, crack a Dorito as if giving it a bite. Ooh, we could use Boolean modifier for that. Okay, so the hardest part about the Dorito would be the texturing, I think, on the Dorito. Now, we could probably use some sort of a displacement modifier, right? We can use some sculpting. And of course, it's a really simple, right? It's just a triangle. It's a simple shape, but you have those little curvatures, right? Those bubbles, that surface texturing. We could maybe use some geometry nodes. I'm very limited with geometry nodes, but we can try our best to sprinkle some of those particles on there. Or we could just use a hair system and instance some small particles that we make ourselves, right? There's a lot of different ways we can do this. It's just the question is, what's the best way to do it? What's the most efficient way to do it? And what's going to give us the best result ultimately? Because at the end of the day, there is no right or wrong way to do something in Blender. You just need a good result, in my personal opinion, right? There's probably 1,000,010 ways someone would have done this better and maybe faster, but would they have gotten the same result? I don't know. The only thing I'm unhappy with about this is the glitching we get at the top with the Ferro Fluid, and I think that just has to do where it's contacting the surface. Fix for that could be remesh. We could remesh the surface, and we could smooth that out, right? We could use the smooth modifier. Again, this is where you get into like, what modifiers could I use? Which ones don't I need? Which ones do I need? Sheila says, I would rather see geometry nodes. Particles are always a test for the PC. Very true. Yeah, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, Sheila, but I think GeoNodes uses more of like an instancing type of technique, right? I think it's like instance on points, something like that. So I don't want to say anything wrong here because I don't want to be incorrect about the information I'm giving, but I'm almost positive that we can use an instance on points or instance on faces, something like that. So that could probably be a good way to utilize the Dorito. I mean, it might even be instance on volume. I'm not exactly sure, but we can definitely do something to try to get the Dorito to look the way that we want to. I might even be able to download a source file, or here's where we'll really take it to the next level. You ready for this? I'll go out to the store. I'll buy my own thing of Doritos, which I can't guarantee that I will or will not eat, and then I will photo scan one or just take a picture of both sides, and then I'll convert that into a displacement map in Blender and use some UV mapping to make it look as realistic as we can possibly get it. I'll even shoot it with my high definition camera that I have in here. I don't know where it is, but I can use my high def camera, get a super high res, high megapixel density image. And then what I can do is I can import that into Blender and we can get really crazy with it, right? We're talking textures you've never seen before. This Dorito is going to look lifelike, right? It's going to pop out of the screen. So, and then the Dorito bag, that will be a whole nother topic. But regardless, guys, that is great for next time. We have plenty of things to talk about. Yes, Doritos. Yeah, no, only for research purposes, though. Of course. Omar, I'm with you, man. This is clearly for research, not for consumption. So let's just make sure we keep this educational, all right? Yeah, all right. I think that is going to go ahead and wrap up everything for us here, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this Ferro Fluid tutorial / walkthrough / live stream / Dorito TED Talk. This was, yeah, thank you, Omar. We appreciate your research and development. That's funny. All right, guys. Have a great day. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream now. This will be available on the CG Cookie YouTube channel. Make sure you guys are subscribed and make sure you have those notifications on so you don't miss the next live stream. Have a great day, everyone. Happy blending. Reach out if you have any questions. We'll make sure to get this source file up for you guys so you can experiment with it and hopefully improve it.